Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder, over 90% of our viewers watch our videos but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us out. My name is Claire Whitaker, and before you judge me, before you decide that I'm the villain of this story, I want you to listen. Really listen. Because I never planned to hurt anyone. I never thought I'd become that woman. The one who lies. The one who hides. The one who walks away from the life she built with a man who loved her. I was never reckless. I was never cold. I was a wife. A partner. I stood by David's side for nearly 9 years of marriage. We had routines. We had stability. On paper we had the kind of life people envy. But the truth is, things began to change. Quietly and without warning. And I changed too. David was a good man. Steady. Dependable. Loyal. But he was also distant in a way that's hard to explain. Not physically. He came home every night. Helped with chores. Paid the bills. But emotionally, he disappeared. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being seen. I was no longer the woman he flirted with. Asked questions about. Laughed with. I became background noise. Necessary but unnoticed. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. It was a slow erosion. Of attention. Affection. Connection. I tried to talk to him. I told him I felt lonely. He'd nod. Promise to try harder. Then slip back into silence. It's hard to keep begging for love from someone who doesn't realize you've already run out of ways to ask. Then Mark came into my life. I met him through work. He was consulting on a marketing project we were developing for a nonprofit. At first, it was just work. Long strategy sessions. Brainstorming over coffee. Emails at odd hours. But then it became more. Not in the physical sense. Not yet. But emotionally, undeniably, something shifted. He listened. He noticed things. He remembered what kind of tea I liked. What my favorite song was. How I wrung my hands when I was nervous. He made me feel alive. Relevant. Like I mattered. I told myself it was innocent. I was just excited to have someone to talk to. But when you start hiding messages, when you start changing hotel names on receipts, you know it's gone too far. The first time we crossed the line. And no, I won't go into details because this isn't about that. I cried the whole way home. Not because I didn't want it. But because I had betrayed the man who once held my hand in the rain and promised me forever. I didn't tell David. How could I? What would I say? I feel like a ghost in my own marriage. And I made a mistake that I keep making. The number I buried it. I tried to stop. I told Mark it had to end. But we kept finding reasons to see each other. He made the loneliness feel tolerable. He filled in the blanks my husband no longer saw. I still made dinner. Still kissed David goodbye. Still posted smiling pictures on holidays. But inside, I was crumbling. And the guilt. It never left. It was there in every stolen glance. Every deleted text. Every time David looked at me with eyes that still trusted me. And then one night, it all came crashing down. He cooked dinner. Chicken marsala. Ah, my favorite. There were candles, wine. For a moment, I thought maybe he was trying again. Maybe he saw me. Maybe he was reaching out. But when he slid my phone across the table and asked me to unlock it, my heart stopped. He knew. There was no use denying it. The messages were all there. The hotel receipts. The calls. My betrayal, laid out like evidence in a trial. I saw the way he looked at me. Not with anger, but with something far worse. Calm disappointment. Like I wasn't even worth yelling at. He asked questions. How long? Do I love Mark? Why? I answered them, though I could barely speak. My voice shook. My stomach churned. But I owed him that much. The truth. Finally. And when he told me, I had until morning to decide whether to stay or go, I knew it was already over. Not just the marriage. The version of me that had hoped, waited, begged for David to notice. She was gone. I packed a bag. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the note I eventually left. It wasn't an apology. Not because I wasn't sorry. But because words felt so small. How do you apologize for years of quiet decay and one unforgivable decision? I moved into a temporary apartment, just for a while, to figure out what I wanted. Mark was supportive at first. But things got complicated. He wasn't as available as he'd promised. He had his own mess to manage. And slowly, I began to realize something. I wasn't in love with him. I was in love with the version of me he reflected. The woman who was seen, heard, valued. Alone in that apartment, I had time to think. About the life I'd destroyed. About the man I walked away from. David wasn't perfect. But neither was I. And the worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was knowing that the man I had once shared everything with now had every reason to hate me. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I could rebuild. Quietly, and without chaos. But I underestimated him. David didn't beg. He didn't scream. He went silent. Colder than I expected. And then things began to change. Subtly, at first. I noticed colleagues pulling away from me. Invitations to events I used to plan stopped coming. Rumors began to swirl. About me. About Mark. It was like someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. Carefully. Deliberately. I didn't know it then, but David was documenting everything. Building a case. Not for court. But for something more devastating. Reputation. Trust. Credibility. And he had all the receipts. Literally. He never called me. Never confronted me again. But his silence was a storm. And I could feel it coming. I didn't realize how fragile my world had become until it started unraveling. At first, it was little things. A few emails that didn't get answered. A job interview that mysteriously got cancelled after being scheduled. A grant I was overseeing was suddenly reassigned to someone else in the department. I told myself it was just bad timing. That people were adjusting to my absence. That maybe it was fallout from the separation. But deep down, I knew. David wasn't yelling. He wasn't storming into my life demanding explanations. He was doing something far more calculated. Erasing me. Quietly. Professionally. Completely. Then it started getting personal. Mark's wife found out. I didn't know how at first, but the answer came soon enough. She emailed me. A scathing cold message that simply read, "Your husband is much better at this than you think." That's when I realized what was happening. David had gone to her. Or maybe he didn't even need to. Maybe he left enough breadcrumbs for her to find on her own. Either way, it was done. Mark's wife filed for separation. Their kids were pulled out of school for a few weeks. Mark called me. Furious. Panicked. Blamed me for everything. I wanted to scream that this wasn't what I wanted. That I didn't plan for any of this. But it didn't matter anymore. We were both exposed. Mark's company opened an internal ethics review, and I was asked by my nonprofit to step aside until things settle. No one said the word affair. No one had to. In our world, all it takes is whispers to burn everything down. I tried to reach out to David. Not to beg. I wasn't expecting reconciliation. I just wanted him to stop. To understand that I was drowning, and his silence was the weight pulling me under. He never responded. Not to texts, emails, voicemails. He became a ghost that haunted me through consequences. I went from respected to disgraced in less than a month. And what stung the most was knowing I deserved most of it. The thing people don't understand about betrayal is that it doesn't just break others. It breaks something inside you too. I thought I was chasing something I'd lost. Validation. Love. Meaning. But all I did was sabotage the one person who had quietly supported me, even when I couldn't see it. When I left, I thought I was choosing freedom. But all I found was isolation. I started seeing a therapist. Trying to make sense of how I got here. The sessions were brutal. I had to confront the choices I made, and the parts of me I didn't want to admit existed. The resentment. The selfishness. The emptiness I tried to fill with someone else's attention. I asked myself over and over, why didn't I just say how unhappy I was? Why didn't I scream louder before I broke everything? But regret doesn't rewind time. It just lingers. And David, he wasn't sitting still. He was moving forward, methodically rebuilding a life without me while I was stuck sifting through the rubble of mine. I heard from a mutual friend that he'd started lifting again. Running in the mornings. He'd lost weight, shaved his beard, bought a new car. He looks different, she said. Better. Happier. Good, I told her. He deserves that. But the truth? It gutted me. Because I knew that new version of David wasn't built out of healing. It was built out of anger. Of resolve. Of revenge. He didn't just want to move on. He wanted to prove I was the worst mistake of his life. And he was succeeding. Mark moved cities. I haven't spoken to him since his wife served him the papers. I heard he took a demotion just to get away from the backlash. He didn't blame me anymore. He just wanted to disappear. Part of me couldn't blame him. I wanted the same. I stopped going on social media. Every time I logged in, there was a new comment, a new reminder. People who didn't even know the story had suddenly become experts in morality. My inbox filled with phrases like homewrecker and you got what you deserved. And maybe I did. I began volunteering again. Anonymously. Soup kitchens. Animal shelters. Anywhere no one knew my name. I wasn't trying to fix my image. I just needed to do something that wasn't about me. Something that made me feel human again. And then, one afternoon, I saw him. David. He was walking out of a cafe, talking to a woman. She was laughing. The kind of laugh that used to belong to me. He opened the car door for her. She smiled up at him. Touched his arm. I ducked into a store window before they could see me. I don't know why that moment broke me more than anything else. Maybe because I had spent so long thinking of him as the quiet, hurt man I left behind. But that wasn't who he was anymore. He looked confident. He looked free. And I was still shackled to my choices. I stood in that store for 20 minutes, trying to calm my heartbeat. I wanted to run to him. Tell him everything I'd realized. Tell him how sorry I was. But I knew it was too late. He didn't want closure. He wanted distance. And maybe revenge wasn't just about ruining someone else. Maybe it was about living well enough that they never get to be part of your story again. I went home that night and opened a fresh journal. I wrote the truth. All of it. Every mistake. Every lie. Every reason. Not for anyone else. For me. Because until I could face what I'd done without flinching, I would never heal. I know now that infidelity doesn't just destroy marriages. It changes who you are at your core. And what David did after. His silence. His precision. His ability to dismantle my life without lifting a finger in my direction. That was the kind of revenge that no one sees coming. I used to be his wife. Now I'm just the reason he became unbreakable. People think time heals everything. It doesn't. Time just lets the pain scab over until you learn how to walk around it. It doesn't undo what's been done. It doesn't take away the moments that haunt you in quiet rooms. Or the silence that follows your name in conversations that used to feel warm. It's been 2 years since I left David. 2 years since I packed that bag, walked out the door, and watched my old life close behind me without a sound. I imagined that one day the fog would lift. That I'd breathe a little easier. That the ache in my chest would shrink until it became just another scar I didn't have to explain. But scars don't fade when you keep running your fingers over them. And I never really stopped. After I saw David that day with the woman outside the cafe, I stayed away. No more accidental run-ins. No more glances at his social media. I unfollowed him on everything, deleted his number, and told myself that cutting the last string would help me move on. It didn't. He never contacted me again. Never replied to the final message I sent him months later. The one where I didn't ask for forgiveness, but simply said thank you. For loving me once. For letting me go. For not destroying me publicly when he easily could have. But maybe I spoke too soon. Because one morning, I got a letter. No return address. No handwriting I recognized. Just a simple folded piece of paper inside that said, "This isn't revenge. This is accountability." Attached was a legal document. David had filed a formal ethics complaint against me, through a board I used to serve on. One I had left quietly, but still listed on my professional bio. He'd sent them evidence. Dated, indexed, and organized. I wasn't even angry. I was stunned. He had waited all this time. And then, right as I thought the world had forgotten, he reminded me who he had become. And who I'd turned him into. I didn't fight it. I resigned. Publicly. I issued a statement that I crafted for days, reading it over and over again to make sure it wasn't defensive, just honest. I made personal choices that compromised my integrity. I take full responsibility. The story didn't go viral. No one marched in protest. But it circulated just enough to make the people I once worked with politely avoid me. I became Claire Whitaker, formerly. I moved again. New city. New apartment. New version of myself. I don't use my full name anymore, on resumes. I freelance under a business alias and work mostly with out-of-state clients. It's better that way. Sometimes I imagined running into David again. In a bookstore, maybe. Or at the airport. We'd lock eyes, say nothing, and I'd wonder what he was thinking. Would he still hate me? Or would he see a woman who paid the price for her mistakes? Because I have. Every day. Not just in the jobs I lost, or the friends who faded, or the silence from people I once called family. But in the way I look at myself in the mirror and still don't fully recognize the person staring back. David got stronger. I watched it happen in real time. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to curse me out, or burn my things, or blast my name across the internet. He took his pain, and he turned it into precision. Into a life that didn't include me. That's the part that hurts the most. Not the exposure. Not the humiliation. But the erasure. He erased me so carefully, so thoroughly, that I sometimes wonder if I was ever part of his story at all. Or if I was just a chapter he regretted and removed in the next edition of his life. I don't tell people I was married. When they ask, I just say, it didn't work out. If they press, I change the subject. Because how do you explain that you destroyed someone's trust and then watch them rebuild a version of themselves stronger than before, without you? Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I scroll through anonymous message boards. I read posts from other women who've done what I did. Some regret it. Some justify it. Some still don't understand what they broke. But I do. I understand now that love isn't just about being seen or heard or held. It's about being loyal, even when it's quiet. About staying present, even when it's hard. And when you walk away, especially if you've betrayed someone, you don't get to control what happens after. You don't get to choose how they heal or how they hurt you back. David didn't torch my life with fire. He dismantled it with truth. He never made up lies. He never exaggerated. He just showed the world who I had become and let them draw their own conclusions. He was deliberate, patient. And when it all came crashing down, he wasn't standing there with a smirk. He was already gone. Far ahead. Already living a life I would never be allowed near again. I heard he got married again last fall. She's a teacher. They adopted a dog. They travel. I saw a picture once, passed to me through a friend who didn't know she wasn't supposed to mention it. He looked happy, truly happy. And that's when I knew his revenge wasn't about destroying me. It was about making sure he would never have to think of me again. He made sure that no one would ever look at him and see the man who got cheated on, betrayed, humiliated. They would see the man who rose from it. They'd see the version of him I created, not by loving him, but by breaking him. And me? I live small now, quiet. I plant herbs on my windowsill. I write grant proposals for people who don't care what my last name used to be. I send birthday cards to my sister and have dinner alone most nights. It's not punishment. It's just, what's left. They say every story has a villain, a hero, and a lesson. I was the villain. David was the hero. And this, all of this, was the lesson.